another wonderful, beautiful plant to share with you. Not only is it aesthetically beautiful, but it also has an incredible taste. This is known as Sego Lily, Calochortud nuttallii, and it has a very rich history to it. Ethnobotany is the study of how past cultures and societies used plants for food and medicine. And whenever possible, it's always good to know the history behind the plant and how it was used. This is one of the plants that we have a fair amount of information about, much of it coming through Europeans who learned it from Native Americans. In 1805, the Lewis and Clark expedition was in the process of exploring what to Americans was uncharted territory. And they had come across a number of Native American tribes. One of the Native American tribes they came across was the Shoshone tribe. Meriwether Lewis, who had received expert guidance in botany from one of the botanists back in the eastern seaboard, described how Shoshone women had a huge quantity of roots from 3 different plants. And these roots were wrapped separately in parfleche made from bison hide. Basically is rawhide of the bison skin. And he described them in great detail. One of them was bitterroot. Another one was likely this plant, known as Sego Lily. Sego is a Shoshonean word that means edible bulb. Several decades later, in the 1840s, Mormon pioneers were trying to find their promised land, and eventually they settled in Utah. When they were traveling, some of the people could not afford to bring enough food, others just simply ran out of food, and the Mormons were forced to basically live off the land. They were known to have eaten crows and rabbits and even wolves, and they also relied on some of the wild roots to sustain them. And this is one of the wild roots that helped to sustain them. In 1848, the Mormons suffered an incredible famine that they said was of biblical proportions. They basically suffered through an infestation of crickets that destroyed much of their crops, and they were facing starvation. This plant is one of the plants that's credited with saving the Mormons from starvation. The Mormons had learned about this plant from Native American tribes that lived in the area, and they would dig this plant up with great relish. And when they could, they would mix it with cornmeal. When that ran out, they just relied on the wild plants that grew in the area. A few years later, as more Mormons were arriving in Utah, those who were the original inhabitants, the original Mormon inhabitants of Utah, really thought that they had experienced something special that other Mormons really hadn't experienced, and that was that starvation time. And as a way to distinguish them from other recent arrivals in the Mormon community, they referred to themselves as bull beaters, as a badge of honor, as a way to mark the tribulations they had faced. Eventually, this plant would come to be the state flower of Utah in honor of its special place in Mormon history. We're going to take a closer look at this wonderful plant. Again, I want to remind you of harvesting ethic. I can count on one hand the number of times I've dug up the bulb of this plant, and I honestly prefer to just enjoy its beauty. These bulbs, the Sego Lily, go fairly deep into the ground, sometimes like 4 to 6 inches, and they pretty easily separate from the stem, so you have to take care as you're digging, otherwise the flower stem will separate from the bulb. And there it is. What a beautiful plant. There's another species of lily, Mariposa lily, that overlaps in its range with this Sego Lily. And so you have to look specifically for certain characteristics to distinguish it from that other species. That other species goes by the Latin name Calochortud gunnissonii. Sego Lily is just one of many in this genus that grow throughout the western states. There are an estimated 60 species in the Calochortud genus, and this is just one of those 60. Many of them actually grow in California, and some of the species are extremely rare. One of the things you look for is the number of leaves it has. Usually Calochortud nuttallii has 3 leaves, and you can see 1, 2, 3 leaves there. The Calochortud genus is comprised of a number of species, 60 as I mentioned, and all of them have 3 petals, like this one here. Just as a word of caution, the Calochortud genus, including this specific species, can look very similar to death camas in certain stages of growth. In order to be certain of the identification of this plant, I'm actually going to pull the petals apart so I can show you something. Got to try to be a little careful with this. At the base of each petal is a round gland. This is what separates it from the Calochortud gunnissonii. It also is fringed by little yellow hairs like you see here. You need to be careful because this bulb looks identical to the bulb of death camas, at least as far as I've been able to determine. So what you would do in order to prepare this is you would pull off the skin or the coating of the bulb, and that's just filled with starchy goodness. Native Americans would dry these out and preserve them for future use. In addition to that, they could eat them fresh, although, as with a lot of roots or bulbs, it's best to cook them to make the various nutrients that are locked inside accessible to the human body. I'll talk more about that in the future, but there are many bulbs and roots that really need to be cooked to really enjoy the complete nourishment that that bulb or root provides. So I'm going to go ahead and eat this. The whole plant is edible, which makes it nice. You don't have to waste any part of it. I always like to start by eating the flowers and buds because they have a delicious, unique flavor, unlike any other plant I've ever tried. You can also eat the leaves. Remember, since I didn't cook this bulb, I'm not going to be able to access all the nutrients that this plant would have and could provide for me. But I can still get some nutrition from it. I'm going to go ahead and try it. Absolutely delicious. Has a nut-like flavor. What a special plant. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. I'll be coming at you with several more videos of various other plants.